of damage to the agricultural sector, consumers bracing for seemingly inevitable spike in the price of local produce to the destruction from Beryl. The question was answered. Beryl did bring peril. For the southern coast of Jamaica, Beryl has inflicted a more disproportionate blow in comparison to the rest of the island, and the recovery bill reflects that reality. One of St. Elizabeth's symbols of parochial pride, Monroe College, anecdotes the impact of the hurricane. The school has already racked up a recovery bill of $300 million. The inevitable question after such damage is help on the way. The government has announced a suite of recovery efforts. Prime Minister Andrew Holness announced the Build Back Better Fund alongside the NCB Foundation, which is encouraging donations for the national post-Beryl recovery effort. On Tuesday, Minister of Finance Nigel Clark announced Jamaica's tropical cyclone policy with the Caribbean Catastrophe Risk Insurance Facility, CCRIF, has triggered a payment following the passage of Hurricane Beryl with $16 million for post-Beryl recovery. CCRIF is a risk pooling facility owned, operated, and registered in the Caribbean for Caribbean governments. It is designed to limit the financial impact of catastrophic hurricanes and earthquakes to Caribbean governments by quickly providing short-term cash flow when a policy is triggered. CCRIF was developed through funding from the Japanese government, but receives funding from the Government of Canada, the European Union, the UK, France, Ireland, and Bermuda, the World Bank, the Caribbean Development Bank, as well as through membership fees paid by participating governments. So will Jamaica bounce back from the economic perils of Beryl? The man who runs the state's purse strings is here to lay out his plan.
Thank you for that, scene setter. So, Dr. Clark, welcome to Lead Story.
Thank you for having me, George. Always good to be here.
Excellent. You're a Monroe old boy, correct?
That's correct.
There you go. So, I mean, you would have been horrified by the pictures you saw of what your old school looks like post-Beryl.
I can verify that those are damaged photographs. The photograph shows very damaged buildings as compared to what they were before.
Yes.
And I look at it and I have two reactions. One is to be quite saddened by the impact, but the other is to be quite thankful that we were spared the worst. A direct hit from Beryl would have meant not one school looking like that, but 200 high schools looking like that, 1,000 primary schools looking exactly like that.
Yes.
And that is the possibility that most worries me, which is a real possibility. It could happen at any time.
Yeah. All right. So what Jamaicans are keen to know at this point, as the figures keep coming in, because the Jamaica Agricultural Society says the damage to the sector is about $2 billion. The minister, very preliminarily, about 2 days after Beryl passed, said about $1 billion and counting. Health figures coming from Dr. Christopher Tufton. You heard the preliminary assessment of roads. Just what is this final bill trending towards, if you could say that?
Well, the numbers are still coming in. So we don't have a final bill at this time, and it might be some time before we have one. Suffice to say, we know what hurricanes in the past have cost. So we have sort of the orders of magnitude of the possibility. But the framework that is useful to think about the government's response and intervention is that in the immediate aftermath of a hurricane, we're focused on relief, right? Focused on providing relief to the persons who are directly affected. And that obviously comes at a cost as well.
Yes.
And while, relief has started, but before relief is over, we have what we call recovery, which is the efforts to get the economy and the society back to where they were functioning prior to Beryl. That doesn't mean that everything is fixed.
Yes.
But it means, for example, if you need taxis to be able to go from point A to point B to transport people, or raw materials or finished goods to go from point A to point B, then recovery means you have to move the trees from the road so that the taxis and the trucks can ply as they used to. So that's the second phase. And then the third phase is reconstruction. And reconstruction is where, what is required in reconstruction is not absolutely necessary for relief or recovery. And reconstruction is where the bill is highest and takes the longest time. So if you think about relief, recovery, and reconstruction as upside down U's, let us say, right? Then relief would have in terms of the bills, relief would peak at a lower level than, say, reconstruction, and it finishes earlier. Before it finishes, recovery begins, and before that finishes, reconstruction begins, but it has the longest tail because of the cost involved. So that is how, I would encourage your viewers that's the frame that the government is bringing to this response.
Rather than an upside down U, you could have said a common N. There you go. So here's the thing, though. For the first time in a long time, when the country has had a disaster of this scale, and we still are thankful that we dodged the worst of it, we are in a position where the initial reaction is not to say, international community, help.
Correct.
And I want you to underscore how important that is.
Oh, it's critically important. We don't welcome hurricanes, but we can say with absolute confidence that we've never been better fiscally prepared, financially prepared for a hurricane as we were for Hurricane Beryl. And that is because we have spent the last several years building a multi-layered suite of financial instruments that provide resources in the event of a natural disaster that the government has access to. And that is new, that did not exist before. While we had one layer that existed, we've had for some time, it's a layer that never paid out. And I can get into some of the structural reasons for that. So we would have come into this storm, as finance ministers, imagine, I am just, as Beryl was coming and it looked as if it was going to be a direct hit, I was praying to God that it didn't happen. But I was able to have a certain amount of peace because we had done the work beforehand to put financial instruments and to put financing away in the event of, a hurricane like Beryl or a worse hurricane.
But before you get into the details, though, because here's the important thing for me, as I've been thinking about this all week. When you, the finance minister, rise in the parliament and say something along the lines that you've just said here, there are Jamaicans, business people, regular citizens who say, that means that there are resources at the government's disposal to help me to return to the same state I was in as an individual business person before Beryl hit. In other words, all of us will be able to get all we need to be back where we were pre-Beryl because there is money that exists. Is this a flawed way of thinking?
So, George, the first thing I want to express deep empathy with the persons who have been affected. You wake up one morning or during a hurricane and your roof is gone, all the items,
your fish pot gone,
your items that you've collected over time, damaged and soaked beyond belief, your fish pot gone, your boat has been damaged. I mean, it is a highly disruptive and heartbreaking experience for thousands of Jamaicans. And my heart goes out to all of the persons in St. Elizabeth, in Clarendon, Hanover, St. Thomas, who have been, and parts of St. Catherine, who have been really, really badly affected. What we can say, as the Prime Minister announced in Parliament on Tuesday, there will be some relief for those who have been affected the worst by this hurricane. And that relief will be coming shortly. However, the way you pose the question, it would not be financially possible for the government to take on the sort of reconstruction expenses for every single individual who's been affected. That bill would be enormous. So just like other intervention programs, the focus is on assisting the persons who have been affected and making sure that we make a special effort to assist in the persons who were vulnerable even before the event. And those who have become newly vulnerable. But it's not that we can go and build a new house. Right? The government wouldn't have the money to go and build a new house for everybody. That would be completely unaffordable.
And just before we go to the break, again, so if I lost 300 layer chickens, the red Hampshire chickens that produce the eggs. And I lost my 25 hogs, and I lost my greenhouse that I used to do hydroponic farming. I should not have the expectation that because RADA came and the agencies came and totted up what I lost, what I say I lost and what I could prove I lost, that there will be a relief check or a recovery check or a rebuilding check in the amount of precisely what I lost. I shouldn't expect that, because there are people who, I'm telling you, are thinking that, oh, they say they have money, that is how I'm going to shape my expectation.
Right. I mean, the government is not in the capacity to provide an insurance product to Jamaica, to all Jamaicans.
Yes.
Right. So that's what an insurance product would do.
Yes.
You know, a private insurance product, you go with one of the insurance companies, you insure your farm or your chicken house. That's what insurance does. The government is not in the business of providing insurance. But what the government is in the business of is providing relief, right? And there's a difference between relief and insurance. But I know that, you know, Jamaicans are appreciative of, certainly in past events, appreciative of government acting quickly to provide relief. Yeah, even if we can't provide, you know, full coverage insurance for the losses that they have experienced.
So it's relief, recovery, and rebuild, and they bleed into each other on a continuum. And that's what the finance minister says the government will be providing the assistance to those who are affected by a burial along that continuum, in that way, those 3 points moving from one to the next. This is Lead Story here on CVM TV. Back with more after these.
Jamaica's favorite drama, Your Guilty Pleasure.
Listen to me, is it, Trevor Madden? I don't want you to gamble with my life or the lives of our children.
Royal Palm Estate is on CVM every Tuesday and Sunday at 9 p.m.
The time by Grace. Taste that moves you is
6:45.
no more fear of missing out. CVM TV News is on YouTube. Get up-to-date news, sports, and business content at CVM TV News anytime, anywhere. Subscribe now to CVM TV News to see it happen.
Touching up the cost of burial and what that final bill is likely to look like, and the government's ability to settle the bill. The government has said, look, it is moving quickly to help those affected, those worst affected, to be in a position to help themselves get back to where they were. But there cannot be an expectation. It's not a reasonable expectation to expect that every asset you would have lost during burial, that those will be replaced by the government. It's a relief, recovery, rebuild effort, not an insurance payment exercise on an individual basis. That's not what's being attempted by the government and its collaborators in this very difficult time for those in the southernmost communities in the country who were affected by burial. So now, Dr. Clark, with the various instruments that you have told the Jamaican people, the various facilities that you would have put in place as the government to prepare for literally a rainy day, and a rainy day with a lot of wind, yeah?
Correct.
How much of the drawdowns do we have in hand now, or are expecting in the next few days, that would have been triggered by the scale of what we sustained last Wednesday? Okay.
So I have some updated figures for you, because, the provided figures as at a particular date.
Yes.
Right? So we have in our contingencies fund, we have $5.3 billion. Before I had said $4 billion, which would have been for a prior period.
Yes.
Okay. As at today, the number is $5.3 billion. We have $500 million in a natural disaster fund, which is ODPEM. Right? The Ministry of Finance has $5.3 billion in contingencies, but the 500 in ODPEM, add that, that's 5.8. And we had made a budgetary provision to provide, $1 billion to our national natural disaster risk fund, which is a brand new fund that for which the legislation was just passed in June. So we passed the legislation in June.
Yes.
You'll recall.
Yes.
And in the budget, if you go back, you can look, there's a line item, $1 billion for that fund. So one could say that, so that would be 5.8, that's 6.8. And then we have the expectation, because our CRIF policy, our tropical cyclone policy has triggered, and that will deliver an amount of about 2.5 billion Jamaican dollars. So that would bring us up to about 9.3 billion. Right? We expect excess rainfall policy to kick in. But let's wait to see for confirmation on that. Now, here's the thing, though, George. The thing is that we are at the very beginning of the hurricane season.
That's the fear.
Beryl is the first hurricane, right, to traverse the Caribbean for this hurricane season. In school, we learned June too soon, July standby, August almost, September, remember, October all over. Well, this was June too soon. We still have 4 months to go.
Yes.
And it's very likely that we'll have, even if it's just excess rainfall, we're going to have that at some point. So, and then, right, so we're going to have to pace and time ourselves to ensure that, should that happen later on, we have resources on hand that we can use. So so you asked me what we have on hand. That's what we have on hand.
9.3 billion.
We speak, 9.3 billion. We do have access to our credit contingent claim. That's a loan product. But I don't want you to, it's a very important loan product.
Yes.
It's not like normal, it's a product, a credit contingent claim you negotiate in advance. I negotiated that 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and it's put aside. The trigger is a natural disaster.
Yes.
So once it happens, you have the funds available that you can draw down.
Yes.
So you don't have to be negotiating a loan.
Right, which takes a long time. So
getting board approval, signing up to commitments that you're going to do, what law you're going to pass, what, the conditionalities and so forth.
Yes.
This is as fresh available, you can draw it down.
Yes.
But like other things, you draw it down now and you have something else, you can't draw it down, it's a fixed amount. It's a big amount, but a fixed amount. So that is something we have to think about as well. But as I mentioned, right now we're focused on the relief stage and to begin the recovery stage, and that is underway, as the Prime Minister mentioned.
Question then, so is it that the monies that have been expended on the relief section of the continuum, is that going to be taken back out of the facilities that have now become available, or the government to just look at the relief funds that it had to spend up front before anything was triggered that it could draw down from? Count that as money spent. How will it work?
The relief will be financed by our natural disaster resources. Yes, we're going to finance it from that, even if it's advanced from other sources up front.
How different is your first supplementary estimates to the expenditure, the estimates of expenditure you tabled, and it was approved by the Parliament long time after the budget, everything? How different will that look given what you are now faced with having to pay for?
The first supplementary estimates normally, they've been tabled earlier in previous years for specific reasons, but normally we'd expect them in around September, October.
Yeah.
Beryl has definitely shifted, right?
Yes.
Because we have expenses that were not anticipated in March of this year. We have some resources, thankfully, because we've been proactive to provide for these in advance. But Beryl will certainly have shifted things. The other part that we have not been talking about, George, is that, Beryl would also, potentially impact revenues. The tax office would have been closed for 4 days last week.
Yes.
There are only 20 days in a month, right?
Yes.
20 working days, on average. So you close for 4, you've closed for 20% of the time.
Yes.
So when you talk about, so that's the side of it that has a long tail. It appears later, not just in new expenses, but your revenues have been interrupted. And of course, to the extent that economic activity has been interrupted for many people who don't have light, don't have water, don't have phone, right? So the economic activity that would normally take place
low has been further hit,
exactly.
yes.
Yeah, it can have an impact on the government's revenue. So that is a part of the cost of the hurricane as well. So our first supplementary estimates will have to take all of that into consideration and, plot the path forward for the remainder of the year.
Those who've been paying to the news and who would know that there is a line of credit available through the IMF and are wondering, okay, what does this mean about our renewed borrowing or drawdown arrangement with the IMF? What can you say to them in light of what Beryl is posing and the resources that we need to marshal to address the problems?
Yes, so the good thing is that Jamaica, the government of Jamaica, has a stack of financial products that have very different characteristics, but what they have in common is that it represents resources. One of those products that we have is that we have a precautionary liquidity line with the IMF.
The PLL, yeah.
The PLL, which is for countries, Jamaica is the only country in the Caribbean has ever qualified for a PLL. Only country in CARICOM. And it maybe even the Caribbean. It is for countries that are deemed to have strong macroeconomic fundamentals. So we have it. And yes, it's available in the event of liquidity problems. Now, we don't foresee that we're going to have any liquidity issues from Beryl. So liquidity issues would arise, for example, liquidity is about being able to service your external obligations. For the private people, meaning people who have bills abroad, you've imported stuff to get the foreign exchange to pay, or for the government. And sometimes in a disaster, your foreign flows can be interrupted, like in COVID. Yeah, the first month of COVID, flights stopped coming in, and there's no exchange, there's no foreign exchange coming into Jamaica. So that's an example of a liquidity crunch or liquidity crisis, and the purpose of that line is for liquidity events which a natural disaster could cause. Thankfully, our tourism industry is still going. It has not been massively disrupted. So I don't foresee that need, but it's there, and everybody should know it's there. We should be able to talk about the financial products that we have without feeling compelled to use them unless the need arises. We could. So that's $140 billion, by the way. We could stay and talk all day, but I just want you to give this address this for the Jamaican public. There are people who may have anxieties about the knock-on effect or the cascading effect, to stick with weather terms, that the hurricane could have on the state of our finances and the good sound way the government has managed the economy to date, and whether or not there are revenue raising measures down the line, and what does it mean for government expenditure on programs like Spark. Will Spark 40 billion be changed? Will it be nipped? Will it be shaved? How much of the recovery will be done in this fiscal year? How much will be put over into the next? There are those anxieties building. As the man in charge of the finances, what can you say to people who have those anxieties this evening? I would say, George, there's no need to panic or to be overly concerned or worried. Jamaica, is in a strong macroeconomic position, which provides us with much more flexibility than we would have had in the past. We have access to resources that we would not have had in the past, and we are going to optimize that in a way that does not put the future at risk. So let's make no mistake about it. Beryl did happen. Beryl has impacted Jamaica in ways that are evident, and in ways that we are not necessarily seeing right now that will become evident. But we are entering this period with strong stability, and what that does is to preserve options. Give us options. As for the Spark program is too important to the Jamaican people, and I don't think you should be worried that would be affected by burial.
Yes.
It could be affected by other things,
Yes.
but not by burial.
All right, you've heard it from the finance minister's mouth. There is no need to be overly anxious about the financial future, the fiscal direction of the country, notwithstanding the damage by burial. He says the government has framed its own season for a rainy day, referring on Shakespeare, those of you who know your literature. And he says that things are in control for the moment. Let's hope that at this very early stage in the Atlantic hurricane season, there isn't a burial 2.0 or even a 3.0, because I don't know what the story would be.
CVM TV.
Brought to you by
KFC, J-Ray and Nephew, Quartz, Sunshine Snacks.
Start saving for your golden years with a Sagicor Lifestyle Approved Retirement Scheme. The time by Sagicor Life is
7 o'clock.
Coming up in CVM News at 7, civil society groups laud Integrity Commission's work. Stakeholders launch Farmers Rehabilitation Fund, and St. James is well on its way to post-burial recovery. Also in the news, regional leaders discuss post-hurricane relief. Whitfield town residents cry foul, demanding removal of garbage mounds. And in sports, West Indies suffer heavy defeat in first test. From Kingston, Jamaica, this is CVM News at 7. I'm TK Dawkins. And I'm Carolyn Brown. It's Friday, July 12, 2024. Thanks so much for joining us. And we begin with a follow-up. The opposition PNP, along with the civil society groups, have weighed in on the pressing issues of transparency and accountability. The latest comments come since revelations from the Integrity Commission that 2 more parliamentarians are under investigation. Ramon Gordon has the details.
The infamous H may likely become a sore point for the Andrew Holness-led government. That's if the opposition has anything to say about it. The Integrity Commission, in its 2023-2024 annual report, revealed that an additional 2 parliamentarians are now under investigation for illicit enrichment, or as the PNP describes it,
anomalies and unexplained wealth in the statutory declarations filed by 8 parliamentarians, an increase from the 6 identified in a previous Integrity Commission report.
Golding maintains that none of the opposition's 22 parliamentary representatives are among the most recently accused, and the PNP continues its call for transparency. But amid seeming attempts to politicize the IC's most recent update, some civil society groups have welcomed at least some developments.
To my mind, the 6th annual report of the Integrity Commission demonstrates that the IC is steadfast in fulfilling its mandate of ensuring that our parliamentarians, our public officials, and others practice and play by the highest ethical standards.
That's Daniel Archer, Principal Director at the National Integrity Action, who's lauding the IC's work amid what she perceives as past attempts to subdue its power.
In a year that was fraught with accusations, where a member was shot, where there was clear intention by our politicians to neuter and reduce confidence in the Integrity Commission, the annual report demonstrates that their work is needed, that they have done good work, and they have done excellent work under the conditions of which they were called upon to work.
At a Rotary Club meeting in Kingston Thursday evening, opposition leader Mark Golding echoed past sentiments, saying the anti-corruption agency should be protected against attempts to undermine it. Former Works Minister Everald Warmington, back in 2023, famously suggested that the Commission's prosecutorial powers be limited.
We should be constantly mindful of the provisions of the Constitution, particularly in instances where its provisions are raised as concern and the tendency of the Commission to overreach.
It is a tireless job. It is a job that brings no friends, clearly, and it is also a job that has high responsibility.
Critics of the IC have also challenged its effectiveness over the years. However, the Jamaica Accountability Meter portal has ostensibly come to the Commission's defense.
If there is anyone that is best positioned to make that call, it would be the Parliamentary Oversight Committee that has that responsibility of ensuring that they are meeting the objectives that the Parliament has outlined in the law and that they are functioning as intended. Accountability at the end of the day is what Jamaicans want. We don't just want investigation. We want to know whether or not people are being put before the court. But we haven't paid enough attention to that section as well.
Ramon Gordon for CVM News.
The people of Whitfield Town are demanding swift intervention to help eradicate rodents and pests invading their homes. Their plight is linked to a growing mound of garbage in the Kingston community, where peace would have been a welcomed guest. Nika Lewis reports.
It's a sorry tale of seemingly only the dead finding rest here, despite the eyesore of a garbage mound just outside the Chinese cemetery. As for the living, rodents and insects of all kinds have brought them hell on earth, promising only a lifetime of diseases and environmental concerns. But how did the debris get here? One resident explains.
Like for the bugs, the white bugs and stuff that you see out there, those are actually there from Labor Day. They did some Labor Day project in the lane and they took the garbage here.
And they took the garbage here?
Yeah, but as it goes for the trees and stuff, the stump and whatever, the branches, you know, the storm just happened lately. So those are things that came from out of the yard.
As for businesses, the stretch of garbage proves a deterrent in more ways than one.
It affects with a whole heap, you know, the stench, and as my cousin mentioned, we talk about the rat, the dog them come and them dig it up, you know, and the stench. I remember I shot the years again. More time people come to we have to tell them, say, go forward, straight up forward out the sense of that carry it because if you don't talk to them, they will run down in front of the shop.
It is also proving an obstacle for locals attempting to avoid being hit by vehicles, limiting access to sidewalks.
The sidewalk block off, man, from Crescent Road come right back down to the end of the cemetery, so block off. And I road there for a while. Because this morning, I go up to the clinic. I'm walk on that side and take a step, come back over on that side. No way on the sidewalk, I can't walk.
The people here theorize new trucks and possibly tractors would be needed to remove the heaps of trash.
They bring a lot of roach, rat, everything you can think of, all dog, and the stench. You have a lot of pampas so the parents them bring come in and rubbish too. And sometimes they try to come for days. The stench start going all kind of havoc. When last the truck come yesterday, you know, and clean up.
So what exactly?
Them take up some of the rubbish them and leave all the trash them on the tree trunk them, but them can't throw in the truck.
I would love for it to remove ASAP because rats and all those stuff are coming into the yard, and as you can see, there are houses that are close to the garbage heap, and I would love for it to remove because we're having diseases and all those stuff spreading now. Worse, the hurricane season, you know, so the whole of the insect and animals them come out, especially the rats. Rats are running in your yard and them something there, so that is not healthy. So I would love for it to remove right now if it's possible.
Nika Lewis, CVM News.
Help is on the way for the beryl-ravaged agricultural sector. Charity organization United Way of Jamaica has launched a farmers' rehabilitation fund in partnership with state and non-state companies. More from Betania Rito.
With the nation's agricultural sector now in limbo, several stakeholders have partnered to create the Farmers Rehabilitation Fund, FRF, to provide immediate and long-term support to affected farmers. The Jamaica Agricultural Society, JAS, will act as the main state body to identify and select farmers and farming groups to receive recovery grants. All beneficiaries will hail from Clarendon, St. Elizabeth, and Manchester, the worst impacted. Disbursement of grants will take place on July 30, 2024, after a needs assessment is conducted by the JAS. However, monitoring and evaluation activities will last from August to December of this year. Chairman of Finance and Administration Committee at United Way of Jamaica, UWJ, Paul Cole, implores other partners to help.
As we embark on this journey of recovery and resilience, I urge all stakeholders, partners, and community members to join hands in supporting our farmers. Let us work together to ensure that our agriculture sector emerges stronger, more resilient, and better prepared for the future.
Meanwhile, Board Chairman of UWJ, Devon Smith, says the initiative will provide farmers with access to essential supplies.
The Farmers Rehabilitation Fund will facilitate access to critical resources, including seeds, equipment, and financial aid to help farmers restore their livelihoods.
The UWJ kickstarted the initiative by donating $500,000. Britannia Whittle, CVM News.
St. James's preliminary reports suggest it's on the side of the lesser impacted parishes. However, the residents were not spared days of darkness sparked by ensuing power outages. Here's more from Trisha Gay Kelly.
St. James, for the most part, is recovering well following Hurricane Beryl. That's according to Montego Bay Mayor Richard Vernon, who highlighted the municipality's efforts to restore normality to the parish post-hurricane. Vernon mentioned that though all 58 shelters were activated, only 23 were used. To date, there are still some citizens and emergency operations center members at the shelters.
They stayed here since the center has been activated on Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. The center is still activated and will remain activated until the last person is treated, assessed, and released from the shelters that we have.
Only a percentage of homeless individuals access the shelters. This definition involves individuals who have been living in vehicles or abandoned houses for more than 30 days. Regarding damage, there's not much, and the little that was done, the mayor explains it's nothing extensive as anticipated with a Category 4 system. Nonetheless, there's work to be done.
We have to ensure that we mobilize our units and clear whatever damage was done so that we can get to a level of normalcy, and we expect to reopen for business fully within the next 24 hours.
And in that bid, he's urging citizens to play their part in assisting with clearing debris on blocked roadways. This in an attempt to prevent debris from entering drains, which Mayor Vernon reports did not overflow. The parish has not reported any flooding, and the mayor has attributed this to the municipality's efforts to clean the drains before the hurricane.
I want to implore upon our residents to use this opportunity to clean up their spaces and place the debris, cuttings, and whatever you clear from your home's bulky waste at a convenient location, as we will be mobilizing our units to clean up.
Many sections of the parish are still without electricity. However, he says the Jamaica Public Service, JPS, is doing its analysis of the lines. Regarding communication, Mayor Vernon says telecommunications agencies are yet to provide an update. However, he is confident they're also working to restore connectivity. Trisha Gay Kelly, CVM News.
Residents of Cassia Park in Kingston are on edge following the recent heavy rains from Hurricane Beryl's outer bands. As Nika Lewis reports, a section of the nearby gully has eroded.
Brother, this make we not sleep, because we already see the circumstance of the gully banks at night, and we can't see it's like how the rain come now. Most of we not sleep tonight because we know say we people in the community life is at less than refuge because the land has slide.
Living on the edge, not by choice, but by fate. After Hurricane Beryl that stripped away whatever lands separated many of these houses from the brink of the Cassia Park Gully in St. Andrew.
We know that there was a pool over to the right, beside a little zinc there, so, now there was a pool of water there. What happened is that a little hole was there, and the neighbor, she made some attempts to contact the council. She never did get through at that time still. I think it was last month, Nothing never happened. But now that little pool, the little channel there, it turned into this what you see here now.
During the Category 4 hurricane, much flooding and saturation saw more erosion of the gully's banks, leaving locals with little to no assurance of safety in their own dwellings. 2 breadfruit trees, once part of a property on Newley Avenue, gave way, transforming a 4 feet wide hole into a massive crater.
The concrete start to undermine and dig out, and we keep filling it up and filling it up. And then now it gets worse and worse, so we can't do anything more.
But things were not always this way, and as one resident explains, efforts to prevent it from worsening have proven futile.
The gully have been undermining for a while, and the people in the community have been reporting it. No response, and now this is the cause. This is a way where people go to and fro, go to school, work, church, whatsoever the necessity may be. And since burial, we have not got an answer nor a proper outlook on the situation.
The locals are demanding swift action as continuing rainfall threatens to eat away more of what remains.
I fear, I really fear, because the last time over the other side across the gully, a fellow did live right at the bank there, so, and right where you see the concrete structure, a part of the retaining wall, all of that did tear away, and the house tear away side of it, so you know, say that may well reach over this side too.
Me made a complaint to the councillor, but she not the head of it. This is the National Work Agency. She only can make a complaint to the National Work Agency.
Meantime, when our news team spoke with the National Works Agency NWA's Manager of Communications and Customer Relations, Stephen Shaw, he says an estimate has been submitted for repairs to that gully, but notes funding and approval is needed before any repair can be effected. He says they are awaiting same, while pointing to the devastation that's taken place across several parts of the island. He's committed to providing more details soon. Nika Lewis, CVM News.
Stay with us. CVM News at 7 continues right after this.
King with the best tasting burger under the sun. You deserve the best, you are number one. Best. Flame grilling, juicy whopper, cause you deserve it. Yeah, next level, awesome, that's how we serve it. My menu done your way, to taste rules every day. Flame grilled goodness, you deserve it. Great taste, well done. More flavor, fresh Burger King, best tasting burger under the sun.
Having failed to make the final of the Copa America, a third place finish beckons for Canada or Uruguay. It's one final push for silverware from CONCACAF debutants Canada as they face the seasoned campaigners Uruguay. The third place playoff of the Copa America, Canada, Uruguay, live Saturday at 7 p.m. on CVM TV.
Brought to you by
KFC, J-Ray and Nephew, Quartz, Sunshine Snacks.
Welcome back. Unlike other corporations commending the Jamaica Public Service for its work during burial, Manchester's councillors did not fail to express their disapproval of the company's operation post the disaster. But this level of dismay did not form overnight, as you'll hear in this report from Trisha Gay Kelly.
I'm saying this one with no water in my mouth. I am very, very disappointed in the Jamaica Public Service.
The unanimous sentiment at the Manchester Municipal meeting on Thursday. For months, the councillors complained about rotten and inefficient poles, but to no avail. And when Hurricane Beryl struck, their points were proven, as the company had not taken heed of their pleas.
Majority of the fall in JPS poles is in Nakpatchit division, I can speak for that, is a result of poor workmen and faulty poles. Poles that we have been reporting for months. Rotten poles, 3 trees that have been hanging on the poles, and even some of the concrete poles just toppled over. They weren't planted deep enough.
The frustration has even led one councillor to suggest that some competition be put in the game or do away with the JPS once and for all.
It is possible that we might have to invest in some solar, but I also believe that this monopoly that we have with the JPS company is one now that should go, because we are seeing where it is becoming a whip to our skin. And we have been affected left, right, and center.
The councillor adds that if the company had responded to their calls for assistance, their response time following Beryl could have been reduced. This feeling echoed through the corporation's walls, as Mayor Donovan Mitchell himself did not mince his words.
And I don't think they were prepared for this hurricane. They were never prepared, because some of the things we pointed out to them in terms of trees entangling in wire and trees near wire and all of that, if for that time they were doing it, we would have all of this problem. Right now, Levy Lane, as close as it is to Mandeville Town, don't have any light.
The mayor says he attempted to call JPS on numerous occasions, but his efforts proved rather futile. Along with no electricity, food shortage is something the parish now faces. Trisha Gay Kelly, CVM News.
Other countries in the region are still counting losses post-Beryl. Thursday, at least 2 prime ministers met for a UN press conference to discuss recovery efforts on the ground, while Jamaica still contends with the fallout from a hurricane described in some quarters as devastating.
Hurricane Beryl, which pummeled Jamaica early July, left a trail of destruction, sinking the livelihood of many across the island. The hurricane resulted in billions of dollars in damage in the southern parishes, affecting major agricultural stockpiles. It's a similar situation in the Eastern Caribbean, as the hurricane swept the region, causing surmounting loss of homes, property, and economic devastation. During a United Nations Regional Response Conference on Thursday, Prime Minister of Grenada, Dickon Mitchell, said the work to return to normalcy has begun, especially in vulnerable areas, but the predictions for the hurricane season are damning.
Our priority over the last week has been mostly in ensuring that we get relief to our citizens who badly need them in Carriacou and in Petit Martinique. Carriacou and Petit Martinique, St. Vincent and the Grenadines simply cannot afford another hurricane. Our islands are simply too vulnerable at this point. Even mere heavy rainfall will cause major disruptions in terms of flooding, landslides, and significant inconvenience to many of our citizens who are now homeless.
Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, shared that regional and international support has been beneficial, but adds the island will require further help.
How is a country with very little fiscal space going to rebuild 2,500 houses, as in the case of St. Vincent and the Grenadines? Even a larger country, the larger economy will find that very problematic, much less to a country as small and fragile as ours.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Andrew Holness announced Jamaica's latest recovery initiative, the REACH program.
Our focus is on comprehensive relief efforts designed to provide immediate assistance and lay the groundwork for long-term recovery and resilience. Madam Speaker, today I am announcing the Relief Emergency Assistance and Community Help REACH program. The major elements of the REACH program will include the distribution of food and essential supplies, utility, water, electricity, and telecommunications restoration, housing and reconstruction support, and economic recovery and restoration of livelihood.
The program announced in Parliament on Tuesday involves the distribution of care packages, including medical supplies and food for the families most affected by the hurricane. Courtney Lewis for CVM News.
Many residents in a part of Portmore in St. Catherine, Westchester, are facing compounded hardships as they deal with both the storm's destruction and ongoing infrastructure issues.
For about a month, the road on Devon Close in Westchester, Portmore, had been dug up, causing significant inconvenience. Compounding the issue, residents have been without running water for weeks. The situation became even more dire after Hurricane Beryl struck.
Before the storm come, there was no water here for about 3 weeks. Then after the storm come, we still never get any water, right? We get the storm and the road to the concrete here, the water was.
The lack of running water has forced residents to rely on bottled water for drinking and basic needs, but it's proving insufficient. Despite the community's efforts to support one another, the prolonged lack of water